Thank you, hi there, and welcome again to Muppet Fans Talking. I'm your host, Marcel Bottaro, and today, this is a very special interview. I'm going to be going to the land down under, and my guest today is a dear friend of mine who I've known for a long time. Basically, from the name of Larrikin Puppets, I have with me my good friend, Brett Hansen. How are you, Brett?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Marcelo. Good to
it's,
be here.
it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. So, for my listeners out there who don't know who Brett is, you're about to find out a lot about him within the next few minutes, but he has a number of wonderful characters that I've had the pleasure of meeting when he came to New York many years ago. Two of my personal favorites, Thog, which is a big blue monster, and a small green Elmo-ish type design monster named Frazimataz. But we'll get into that within the next few minutes of this interview. But again, Brett, thank you so much for joining me today on Muppet Fans Talking.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. So starting off this interview, with everything going on right now, I'm definitely sure that last year you and your wife you had a lot of shows planned, but a major pandemic happened. So, with that, what are you currently working on right now?
Well, yes, a lot of our live, because we predominantly do live performances, puppet shows and workshops. We visit schools and kindergartens and places like that, and festivals and libraries. And all of that was cancelled for about 6 months. And so during that time, we did a few online, actually we did quite a lot of online performances. And then Queensland, the state that I'm in Australia, opened up again. We could do live performances again. But other states in Australia were still shut down. So we were getting live performance bookings from about September and online bookings for interstate and even some international bookings too. So we've done shows for the UK and the US, and we've had some inquiries from Hong Kong and India as well. So it's a weird time doing a mixture of online and live performances. So yeah, we've been working on music, on original songs that we sing in our puppet character voices, and a much larger stage production called Hijabi Girl, a musical puppet show, and that's based on a children's book here in Australia. So a much bigger, larger scale show. Like normally we have this small pop-up puppet theatre that we bring to all of the venues, but this time it's a larger, big set for theatre stages, and we've got a cast of child actors and singers that are recording the voices of the characters' dialogue and songs, because it's a musical. So that's something we've never done before. We usually do all of our own voices for our puppets, but this is a very different kind of show. And so we've been working on that off and on, and trying to get into the studio to record music whenever we can, because sometimes there's issues, short-term lockdowns, and then things reopen again, and then trying to match up availability between us and the sound engineer that's been recording us. So yeah, we've been keeping really busy, basically.
Oh, that's wonderful, and just to hear all these things that you guys are working on, it's wonderful, and here's hoping that I get the chance to come down and see your live shows, because I remember you did a festival here in Brooklyn years ago for puppetry arts, and that was the first time that you and I officially met in person.
Yeah, because we also hung out at the Puppet Kitchen a few times and did some puppetry jams and little casual workshops, and that was really cool as well.
It was, especially for me getting the chance to perform some of your characters, which again, Throg, he's, and maybe it's because my favorite color is blue, but he is one of my favorite characters that you've created.
Well, thank you. He's become a bit TikTok famous lately now.
I noticed. I've noticed that as well.
That's another thing that happened during the pandemic. I think a lot of people joined TikTok because what else are you going to do? And so we sort of just started doing puppet videos there and grew a fan base, I guess, through there. So many other people now have seen Trog and all of our characters, and it's been really interesting to see how that works. The other thing we did a couple of music videos too, including there's a very famous rapper here in Australia called Illy, spelled Illy, and they asked us to come and perform our characters on a music video, and that's been really cool as well. We've got some good feedback about that, and good high quality. It's very rare to do, like, film and TV puppetry is really rare in Australia. It's really hard to sort of get into. So whenever any opportunities come up for us, we take them, and that's usually short films, music videos, guest spots on talk shows or things like that. So it's really nice to see our puppets filmed professionally with really expensive equipment, and to be able to see the final result is very nice. Very nice.
Absolutely. So, with this podcast interview, I always ask my guests the traditional question of what was your first exposure to the Muppets, whether we're talking about Sesame Street or the Muppet Show, Fraggle Rock, or any other Jim Henson Muppet productions. Do you remember your first exposure to any of those shows long ago?
Yeah. My earliest memories are as a baby or a very small child watching Sesame Street in the morning and then the Muppet Show at night time. I was around at a time when both of them were on and new, so I'm pretty old. I was born in 1979, so that's the year the first Muppet movie came out.
Right.
And the Muppet Show was still on TV. We had it in Australia, and of course Sesame Street's been on in Australia as well, since it began and still is today. So I just was fascinated with all of these characters, and I just loved them. And I used to put little hand towels or handkerchiefs on my hands and mimic the movements that I would watch. And eventually my parents bought me a little duck and a little hippopotamus puppet, and I would put them on my hands and just practice puppetry while I was watching. I was just fascinated. And I remember I had this VHS tape back when VHS was a thing. My parents had taped the Muppet movie on this VHS tape, and at the end of it they recorded a TV special about Jim Henson and the creation of all of his puppets. They showed Sesame Street characters and Muppet characters being built and then performed, and it was just lovely to watch these behind-the-scenes clips. And this VHS tape I would watch for years and years and years. As I got older and older and older, I'd keep watching this tape. Eventually, I ended up buying the proper DVDs of all the Muppet movies. So like most Muppet fans, I have this very, very large collection of everything Henson has ever done. Everything Muppets, everything Fraggle Rock, everything Sesame Street. As I got older, Fraggle Rock came on TV as well, so of course I loved it. I just loved everything that Jim Henson was doing. And I'm very lucky to have been around when he was still alive to be able to see new things that he was doing. And I just loved it. And I just used to practice, and I just wanted to be a puppeteer. And I just worked really hard to do that. I just wanted to be a puppeteer just like what the puppeteers on all of these productions were like. That's the style of puppetry I really enjoyed. I appreciated marionettes, and I appreciate all the other styles of puppetry, but this Muppet style hand puppetry is what really fascinated me. So I just kept watching, learning, practicing, and aiming to do this as a grown-up, as a job one day.
Absolutely. And adding along to that, I mean, as well for me, I do appreciate marionettes and the other different styles of puppetry. But for me, when anyone ever asks me about puppet related stuff, I always bring up Muppet style puppetry because that, again, much like you, I've always been attached to that, and I really do feel like that kind of style is a lot more freeing for us to perform and create new characters. You know?
Yeah, definitely. There's something about it, something about the lip sync, something about the way that you can bring life and emotion to these sorts of characters. I mean, the way that the Henson puppeteers have always worked is they really they move you like they really bring true life to these characters, and you do feel for them. They don't just look like socks wiggling around on the screen. They really do look like creatures that have feelings, and you care about them. And I really love that about that style of puppetry. Whenever I watch things like Punch and Judy or even marionette shows, while I appreciate the art form and I love any kind of bringing inanimate objects to life, I don't find myself, and this is just a personal thing, like I don't want to offend anyone that really loves those sorts of that sort of puppetry more than Henson style puppetry, but I don't find myself feeling for the characters. I'm not reeled in as much. I'm just watching these characters, and I see them moving, and I like some of the ways that those characters move, but I can't help but see those faces on the Punch and Judy puppets that don't move. There's no moving mouths, there's no blinking eyes, there's just this plain blank face. And the same with some marionette puppets. I can't help but see strings everywhere. And there's something about the Muppets that all of that's gone. You've got emotion in the face, you've got movement, and got movement in the arms. And when they do cool green screen or dressing in black behind the black background, making them dance with their legs, there's something kind of cool and more realistic to me about that. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I just find myself more emotionally involved with Muppet style puppets than any other style.
Of course. So going on with the subject of the Muppets here. Now, of course, for many of us, there is at least one, or if not more, Muppets that we connect with very much, whether it be, again, from Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, or Muppet Show. Do you have a Muppet character that you, Brett, really connect with the most as you were growing up and leading you into this profession to this day?
Yeah, I think a lot of people would say this. Kermit the Frog is the one I connect to mostly for all of the different reasons. So he's a dreamer, and he sets himself a goal and he fights for it. And whatever gets in his way, he kind of just he doesn't let anything stop him. So I relate to that a lot, not just with my goal to become a puppeteer, but all sorts of things in life. Just never give up attitude. But also he's very I don't know. He's got a lot of soul. And like I said before, he's a dreamer. So I'm daydreaming all the time. He loves the environment. He sings on Sesame Street about being an earthling and care for the pond, care for the don't throw your rubbish around, don't throw your litter all over nature, care for nature, care for other beings. There's that kind of Jim Henson hippie kind of thing that Kermit seems to have as well. He loses his temper from time to time. That's because everyone around him is frustrating him. I don't think I lose my temper that much, but I'll blow up if everything's just going out of control from time to time, and I think Kermit does that too. I think I relate to that. And, you know, his dream of singing and dancing and making people happy. That's what I love to do. I love making people happy. That's all I want to do in life. It's all I've ever wanted to do in life. So I think I really relate to Kermit in that way. But I also relate to another Henson character, Ernie, because he's just so silly and a bit of a trickster, a bit of a prankster. And I sometimes relate to that sort of element too. So I guess the two main Jim Henson characters resonate with me.
Wonderful. So now going on to the topic of your puppet company, Larrikin Puppets. Now, because I've wanted to ask this question when I met you and your wife years ago, but I was having so much fun at the Puppet Kitchen, just improvising and, you know, playing with everybody that I constantly forget to ask. But thanks to the purpose of this podcast, because I've always been curious on that. How did Larrikin Puppets come about?
Well, so larrikin seems like an interesting word. It's actually an Australian word. I think in New Zealand they use it too. It's sort of like a silly fool, you know, like a silly prankster, larrikin. Oh, you crazy larrikin! You know, it's an Australian word, and I thought it seemed right. Larrikin Puppets just seems like a good name. But the way I started the company was, well, as you know, I've been just playing with puppets as a hobby for so many years and sort of taught myself. And then I had a few cool little puppets. And one day I went to, in early 2012, I went to a drive-in theatre to see the Muppets, the 2011 movie. And I brought a couple of puppets with me and I sort of poked them out the window of the car. And all of these kids and families swarmed to the car. They were all there to see the Muppets. So when they saw these two Muppet-style puppets coming out of this car, I guess, I don't know what they thought. Maybe they thought it was some publicity stunt that some Muppets had actually come to the screening or something. But they all flocked over to meet these puppets, and all of the parents were asking me, oh, this is great. You've got some real Muppet kind of puppets here. Can I have a business card? Do you have business cards? Do you perform shows? Can we book you to perform at our birthday parties? And I'm like, no, I don't have business cards. I don't yet do this full time, but this really does seem like my calling. I just have to bring a couple of puppets to a Muppet screening and everyone's interested. I was working other full-time jobs and I was in a previous marriage, you know, which wasn't really working out, I guess. You know, this dream of mine to become a puppeteer was crazy to some people, an impossible dream, particularly in Australia. It's really hard to become a full-time artist or performer in Australia. You've got to be able to handle being poor and living on tins of tuna and instant noodles for a while. So I was prepared to do all that, but you know, that's not the reason why my first wife left me, but you know, I'm sure it's one of many reasons why I was just annoying. So she left me and I became unemployed from the whatever full-time job I was doing at the time, because I always worked in retail, worked in supermarkets, I worked in call centres, I worked as a janitor. So these were all very unfulfilling, very minimum wage jobs, very just terrible hours, really long hours, early starts, late nights. I wasn't home very often, and I wasn't getting paid very much to do this very, very hard work. But anyway, when all of that ended, I had nothing else left to lose. So I started my business. By the way, the other thing that ended, as well as my full-time employment and my first marriage, was also 6 months working on a local Brisbane production of Avenue Q. So I auditioned for that with one of my puppets that I bring in, and they loved my puppets, and they got me into the show. They said I was the only one that had any puppetry skills, because at that point I'd only taught myself. I hadn't done any formal training yet. I since have. But, you know, they liked my skills, and they got me to teach the whole cast. So So I was in the show and I got to train the whole cast and we did a great show, but then that ended and that was just nights and weekends. And then my full-time day job ended and then my marriage ended. So then I thought, well, that's it. I got nothing else left to lose. I'm going to start my own business. And so there was this weird little unemployment entrepreneurial program that I'd never heard of before, but apparently it had been going since the 80s and I had no idea. I wish I knew of it many years earlier. But it was called the NEIS program, NEIS, and it stands for New Enterprise Incentive Scheme. So I signed up for this thing. I had to go in and do an interview, like it was a job interview, and I had to convince them that puppetry was a viable business idea, and I wanted to start this puppetry business, and I wanted to perform puppet shows, and there's a need for it. I even talked about the car at the drive-in theatre. Like, this is weird. Like, and they're sitting there with their arms folded, listening to me tell this story with great passion. And I'm like, well, it's a long shot, but hey, you know, I truly believe there is a market for this. People want puppets. They want puppet shows. At the time, there wasn't puppet shows in the communities around here in southeast Queensland in Australia. There were clowns and magicians and animal farms and science shows and all sorts of things, but no puppet shows. Anyway, I managed to convince them. They shook my hand. The main guy shook my hand and said, well, you do realise you're mad, don't you? And I went, yes, absolutely. And he got me into this program, and it involved me going and doing some classes, just like going to school and learning about how to start a small business. And I did several weeks of these classes, and then at the end of the course, I had some assessments that I had to complete, and then at the end of the course, I had a legal business set up with all the right licenses, all the right paperwork, all in place, ready to go. And then they teamed me up with a business mentor just to help me through for my first year running the business, just to help me with things like profit and loss statements and all those boring tax things and money things that you've got to do, and just helping me through doing the marketing, social media marketing and website building and all of that. And the first couple of years were a little bit rough, and I was living on tins of tuna and instant noodles, and I was living by myself, and I was trying to get to these puppet shows, and I'd get one show every couple of weeks, usually a backyard birthday party, but eventually I started getting kindergartens and schools, and it just grew and grew from there. And by my second year, I had met Elisa, my wife, my current wife, and she was very supportive of what I was doing. And but because the business was still very slow, I really did have to get another job. So I got a day job, and it only lasted about 3 or 4 months, another call center. I was being really badly bullied in that workplace, and it was just a really hard place to work. And it got to a point where Elisa said to me, just get out of there. Come and just let's move in together, and just while you get on your feet and get the business sort of going again, work full-time on your business. I'll go and work. It was just really amazing that she trusted me enough to let me work on my business full-time. And I did. And now this business is full-time. And that's really the secret to how Larrikin Puppets got started. A lot of people say, how do you do it? It's impossible if you've got kids, or if you're married, or if you've got a job. And it was just really unusual circumstances. It was all to do with just constant working hard, just being poor for a while. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And then finding someone that trusts you enough to let you work on your business full time, to a point where it becomes full time. And then now I live off it. That's my only income. So thanks to Elisa trusting me to do that, I just worked full days, just building my website, doing my marketing, all of that. So that's how Larrikin Puppets kind of got started. It's a very long story. I hope everyone's not bored to sleep listening, but that's how I started it.
Brett, I'll tell you this much, my friend. For people that are going to be listening to this or are listening to this right now, I guarantee you there is a lot of inspiration that came from that story. of how you started this whole thing. I mean, for me as well, because just hearing, with the ups and downs of how it started, and also how your wife so supportive of what you want to do. In my heart, I truly believe this. You found someone that loves you, loves what you do, and has full faith in you. That's the key to anything, in my opinion. And just hearing all of this, it's inspiring, it's heartwarming, and I'm not gonna lie, it's almost just hearing that last bit of how your wife is still to this day so very supportive of you. I'm almost moved to tears right now.
Yeah, I think that's the secret. A lot of people say to me, "What's your secret?" And I can't say that I did all the work. I mean, I did a lot of work, and Elisa still says I did all the work. And I did all the work to kind of set the business up. But if it wasn't for Elisa allowing me that time, just encouraging me to get out of this horrible job in the call center and just sit down at my computer, and I went out and did business networking. I'd bring Trog along and meet other business owners, and I just did all of that sort of thing. And I did letter drops as well. I had flyers that I printed, and I would put them in mailboxes, and I'd send letters out to all of the schools and things like that. So all of this stuff that I wouldn't otherwise have time to do working in one of these other dead-end jobs, Elisa allowed me that time. And it's just, I think that's the secret, to have someone in your life that cares for you enough and has enough faith in you to just allow you the time to do it. I think that's really what it is. You've just got to have someone there that believes in you. And I had a lot of people that didn't believe in me. I lost a lot of friends. I lost my first marriage. There's a lot of loss when you go to follow a dream that's so bold as to become a full-time puppeteer, particularly in a place like Queensland, Australia. I mean, this is a state where artists and performers, they flee Queensland for greener pastures like Melbourne or even New York, LA, London. Like, it's almost impossible for creative people to thrive in this state of Queensland, Australia. Some people do, but it's very hard work. And I had a lot against me for it, but it's just to have that one person that allows you that time, that has enough faith in you. That's what you need. And it does require a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice, but it was worth it. So, yeah, it's good.
Matt, before we continue on with this interview, I'm just gonna say this, man. From all the messages that I've gotten from you, just talking to you back and forth, and just seeing how much you've grown and everything that you fought for, you are a true inspiration to many people that are going to be listening to this. So with that, I am truly proud of you, Brett, and I'm very honored to know you within this community.
Well, thank you very much. It's very kind of you.
Wonderful. So, along with your puppet company of Larrikin Puppets, now I want to get into the fun part of the interview, where I ask, how did you come about creating your characters, such as Drog, Frazamataz, there's a pink monster on there as well. I forget her name.
Yeah, there's Flossie and Scrambles, and there's a talking cheesecake in there. Free range the chicken.
So, with all the with majority of those characters that you have, how did you come about creating your characters?
Well, I guess coming from that inspiration of the Muppets and the Muppet Show format, which was a variety show, lots of short sketches and songs and things like that. That's sort of the style of puppet shows that I do in all of these different places. in most cases. I mean, sometimes we get asked to do themed shows with educational content, but in most cases they allow me and Elisa, because Elisa now puppeteers with me in some of the larger shows,
Yep.
Sort of a variety show format. So I guess I wanted to create a bunch of characters that had different personalities and were able to sing some pretty cool and catchy songs that the kids could dance to and sing along to. I'm just trying to think about why and how Trog came about. I just wanted a cool, fluffy monster, a live hands monster that could be a bit gruff and silly and get the kids kind of, one of those puppets, one of those characters that he means well, but he gets things wrong all the time and the kids correct him. And that kind of humour. Kids love when they get to correct a silly puppet.
Right.
Free Range the chicken is just this zany chicken that clucks to everything. So it doesn't matter what song it is, whether it's an original one of ours or a popular song. Just the chicken clucking to anything just gets the whole audience laughing. It's just about the easy laughs, really, with us.
Of course.
Marina is a little character who is Trog's little sister. Elisa plays her. Oh. She's a 3-year-old. Elisa does a really good impersonation of a 3-year-old toddler, and we perform to a lot of 3-year-olds in many of our audiences. So we see how they talk, we see how they act, and Marina basically mirrors that. Marina's sort of loosely based on one of our nieces when she was 3, and the way she talks and the voice that she has, and so Marina's kind of loosely based on a 3-year-old niece. She's older now, but when she was 3, that's sort of how she was. And just a gaggle of silly characters that some are more sensible, like the straight man versus the silly man, sort of like Abbott and Costello or Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin kind of thing. So one character's all sensible while the other one's zany and silly, and they have these silly arguments that get the audience laughing. And I don't know, I guess they kind of just, it's hard to explain how. I guess I kind of explained a few characters and how they came about. Scrambles, he's a little bit nervous all the time. He's a little bit confused. He's a little red monster. So his brain's a little bit scrambled. That's why he's called Scrambles. So he's kind of muddled up and a bit confused. And they all kind of work together as a cool little troupe, puppet troupe. The show is sort of a comedy of errors, a little bit like the Muppet Show. Characters are running late, or characters sneak up on other characters, and you've got kids pointing, going, "There, behind you!" And that kind of thing, that kind of humour that kids love. Classic Puppet Show humour. Along with original songs that we've come up with that get them dancing and singing along. So, we found a formula that works. I started the show before Elisa was in my life, so I trialed some of the jokes and some of the scenes. Some of them didn't get any laughs, some of them did. So there's still material that always gets laughs that has right from the beginning. And then other stuff I've scrapped and replaced with new bits that do work and are funny. So we've got this well-polished show that is mostly laughs. Like anything that isn't getting many laughs, we get rid of it and we come up with something new. And so we've got this kind of cool show that travels around, and almost every minute of it is just laughter from the audience, which is great. That's what we want. And it's all about trial and error. And the other weird thing is every audience seems to be different. So sometimes what works in one place doesn't work elsewhere, and you think, do we need to get rid of that? And then we do it again somewhere else, and it gets a laugh. So, I don't know. It's interesting to grow and change the show and mold it and try to find a happy medium where in most places the things that get laughs just keep getting laughs everywhere. So it's fun to kind of play with that, I guess.
All right. Right on. So we touched on the topic on how you got started in puppetry, and you self-taught yourself the art style of Muppet Hansen style puppetry, as with what you discussed when they did a production of Avenue Q. But when you came to the States years ago, you had the pleasure of going to the Beyond the Sock workshop with Noel McNeil and Peter Lintz. So yeah, so going to that kind of workshop, uh, especially getting the chance to meet these two well-known Muppet performers that we all know and love dearly. What was that experience like?
Well, to me, being a puppeteer, I've now established myself as a professional puppeteer, but it wasn't enough to just say, oh, I'm self-taught, because everyone asks, everyone at every show says, wow, where did you go to school to learn this? Or where did you study puppetry? And I used to always have to say, well, unfortunately, there's nowhere for me to go and study puppetry. I just taught myself. I just think that sounds, I mean, yeah, I don't really like to sound like, I don't know, like I'm just some amazing skilled professional that knows everything. I don't claim to know everything, and I also never claimed that what I taught myself was the correct way. So I really wanted to get some kind of formal training. And the only way to do that was to go to the USA, where it all started. That's where the Henson puppeteers are. And Beyond the Sock just seemed like a wonderful way to go along and get my existing skills validated, see where I was going right, see where I needed to improve, because you never stop learning. And
Exactly.
I didn't want to continue doing anything that I was doing incorrectly. I wanted to learn the correct way and at least see if I was on the right track, and where the improvements were. And of course, there were many improvements that I needed, but it was nice to know that there were I was there, but there was just a few little things I needed to change, and it was really good to go and get that training. Actually, the year that I was there, Peter Lintz couldn't make it, so he was replaced with Marty Robinson, the amazing Martin P. Robinson
Oh
of
right.
Telly Monster and Mr. Snuffleupagus fame. And it was wonderful. I found it really wonderful to work with him. He and I got on really well. We shared stories, and I don't know. I just really think it was amazing to work with Marty and Noel. And these are heroes of mine. Like when they announced Peter Lintz will unfortunately not be making it to the workshop this year, I thought, oh no, I really hoped to meet Peter Lintz. And I did eventually meet him a couple of years later in New Zealand at a Muppet event there.
Right. Yes, of course.
Yeah. But to work with Marty Robinson, he's the guy that trained Peter Lintz. He's one of the main trainers who travels the world teaching all of the international versions of Sesame Street. He's been a Jim Henson puppeteer trainer for so many of the new performers and performers all around the world. So to be able to work with him was actually a dream come true. And it was really amazing to spend a week with these amazing puppeteers and just learn everything I needed to learn, just from the basics of manipulating a puppet right through to the advanced kind of film and TV modern puppetry, which isn't done much in Australia. When we've been asked to come and do film and television puppetry since that course, we always ask the filmmakers if they can please provide us with a monitor. And they don't know what we're talking about. We always have to kind of educate them on what monitor puppetry is, how it works, how it's going to make the whole process so much easier for their production, because we're not going to be working blind. We can watch our puppetry on a monitor. We can make sure the eye focus is good, the lip sync is good, they walk into the frame properly. You're not going to see puppeteer heads or arms appearing in the frame. Prior to learning monitor puppetry correctly,
Right.
they used to just point the camera at my puppet and I'd be hiding under a table and working blind, and then you see the finished product and the puppetry is awful. The puppet's all slanted to the side. Sometimes you see my head in the shot, and they have no idea. They just think, yeah, that's funny. There's a funny puppet in our film. But they don't realise that with a monitor, you've actually got much better puppetry, much better control of the puppet. The puppeteer's not working blind. So there was all of this cool stuff that I was able to take in and learn, not just at Beyond the Sock, but also at the Puppet Kitchen with Michael Schuback. So it was really cool to really brush up and learn new skills and just get my own skills so much better than they were. So I really, really enjoyed that time. We spent 3 months in the US, basing ourselves in New York, but then going over to LA and to Texas as well during that time. So it was all professional development, 3 months of professional development, and I loved every minute of it.
That's wonderful. And also, just touching on the subject of Martin Robinson, I have actually had the chance to meet Martin Robinson and go to at least like it was only one master class that he did here in New York. And well, one, he remembered who I was because of this workshop that him and Matt Vogel did, and I got to assist Telly for a little bit, which was fun. But then when it came time to actually put on the puppets, I mean, going back to when we started, I knew exactly how to perform lip sync and how to somewhat manipulate arm rods and live hands. I knew I needed to learn more, but when I got up in front of that monitor, it was a nightmare, and I was embarrassed. Just knowing that Martin Robinson, who's been on Sesame Street for many years, and I'm doing all of this, and on the monitor, it was awful. But I did get him a laugh. Because when my puppet was slanting all over the place, I was trying to straighten him out. I know how to properly keep a character straight on the monitor now than I did back then. When I'm just struggling, and under my breath I just go, boy, this feels like a weekend at Bernie's. And I didn't think Martin was gonna hear that, but he did, and he got a good laugh out of it. I looked over and he was just like, and he gave like a really good hearty laugh. So I was like, all right. I mean, I screwed up tonight, but I got a laugh out of him. So it was sort of a win-win. That and also he pulled me aside afterwards, and he told me, you are good. You are good at lip sync. You are good at arm rods. You are good at live hands. You just gotta brush up on a few other things if you really want to go ahead with this. With creating characters on the spot or creating characters of your own, making sure where the character is on the monitor. And if it wasn't for the Puppet Kitchen and meeting all these other puppeteers who as well work on Sesame Street on the Muppets, I wouldn't be continuing to fight for what I want to do today.
Yeah, it's so true. It's really good to get that encouragement from the best in the business, and that's what I really liked. I needed that. I needed to be told exactly where I needed to improve, and I was an open book. Is that the right expression? Maybe not. I was just open to hearing any and all feedback, good or bad. I needed to hear it, and I was, there was nothing that was going to offend me. Even if they said to me, "Oh, you're doing it all wrong. It's terrible. You have to start from scratch and relearn everything." Thankfully, that didn't happen. But I was open to that because I just wanted to do it right. Because as a professional puppeteer, I want to do it correctly. I don't just, I really needed that training. And I really appreciated the honesty from Marty and from Noel at that workshop. And anything that I needed to improve, I took that in, and I was so very grateful for that, for any advice and any tips for improvement. But also, also very grateful for any of the times that they said, yes, well done, that was good, you're doing well. I'm like, wow, that's awesome that these people, these amazing people, heroes of mine, not only are here to advise and help me get better, but also they can see where I'm going right. And I really appreciate that feedback too. So that's really good. Yeah.
Awesome. It's really awesome. So, going back to the topic on Larrikin Puppets. Now, you've mentioned a whole lot of these amazing production shows that you're currently working on. Now, with all of that you have going down on your plate, do you see yourself doing more stuff, doing more shows like that? Let me just let me go back and say it differently. So with everything that you have now, what are the other goals that you have that you see yourself doing, that you want to achieve in the future, with your characters, or within this field of puppetry?
Well, so when we finally got this big epic theatre production, this Hijabi Girl, a musical puppet show that we've been working on, when that's finally all ready to launch, because we've been working on it for such a long time, and it's such an epic project, it's bigger than anything we've ever done, I'd like to see that doing well. But I think after that, I'd really like to, I'd like a series. I'd like to be on TV, more than just a brief guest spot, more than just, one music video here and there, or a short film here and there. I'd really love to be able to be a puppeteer and go to work and be a TV puppeteer. I think that's the ultimate goal of many puppeteers. I do love going out. We travel all the time. We go on tour. We're on the road, long journeys, sometimes 10 hours drive away into outback regional country towns. And, and the kids are always really appreciative when we come out and perform our shows, because people don't usually go out to those areas. So we love the adventure of going on these road trips and staying in a hotel out in the middle of nowhere, and then performing in all of these libraries and schools and festivals and things. And, the kids and families love it. And we love bringing laughs to all of the people as well. But I think it would be really cool to either have a show that we have created, or to be in a show where I get to go into work every day and perform some puppet characters, just like the puppeteers who work on Sesame Street. They go into work every day and they perform with puppets, Muppet-style puppets every day for TV. And I think that would be really, really cool. We haven't had puppets on TV in Australia for a long time. We had briefly in the 80s, there was a Blinky Bill puppet show. Blinky Bill was an old Australian character from books, so koalas, kangaroos, lizards, kookaburras. So there was a puppet show on TV with all of those characters. There was a show called Mr. Squiggle, which was about a man in a rocket with a pencil for a nose that used to come down from the moon and draw pictures. and there was a whole lot of puppets on that show. We had a character called Agro, who looked a bit like Animal from the Muppets, and he used to just be there hosting cartoons and games and competitions, and he became very, very popular. We had Ozzy Ostrich, who was another sort of puppet co-host that sat on a desk and just told jokes between segments, with all the human cast. And I don't know, that was a big thing in sort of the 70s, 80s, early 90s.
Right.
And then we haven't had anything like that on Australian television in many, many years. There was a TV show called The Ferals that was a bit like the Muppets. It was more violent than the Muppets. They were just these trashy characters that lived in an underground. They ran an underground TV station in the sewers, and they used to just punch each other and beat each other up all the time. It was like a hardcore, angry Australian Muppet show.
Wow.
So that that happened. That was a TV series, but no, we haven't really had anything like it for a long time. So it'd be cool if Puppets came back on regular TV with seasons of episodes, and I want to be in the cast of Puppeteers for that. That's my dream.
Yeah, I totally respect that ambition as well. For me as well. I really hope and wish we keep fighting for what we believe in. I hope there's a chance to do a lot more shows and movies with puppets. But hold on, I'm just picturing back to that ostrich character that you brought up. If I'm not mistaken, I think I saw that ostrich on an old show called Hey Hey It's Saturday that used to air in Australia.
That's the one. That was a family variety TV show that came on every Saturday night for like 25, 30 years. And Ozzy Ostrich was just this puppet that sat on the desk next to the host, Daryl Summers.
Yep.
And they used to have bands and singers come in. They had magic acts. They had all sorts of different game show segments with a live studio audience. And this puppet would just sit at the desk and, tell a few jokes here and there and nod and agree with everything that was being said. There wasn't much in the way of puppetry. He didn't walk around. He didn't do much except just sit there on the desk and talk.
Right.
He didn't have moving arms or moving wings. He had these long legs that were sort of crossed. He sat with his legs crossed on this desk. And I thought he was a cool character, but there wasn't much to him. But at least it was nice to tune in every Saturday night and see a puppet on TV. And I think Ozzy Ostrich was the reason why I watched that show. I just loved seeing puppets on TV. So whether it was watching the American shows like Sesame Street or the Muppets, and then watching these Australian shows like Aggro or Ozzy Ostrich, I grew up with puppets on TV everywhere. And so, of course, I just wanted to be a part of that.
Absolutely. And plus, how I came across that show, Hey Hey It's Saturday, there's a ventriloquist who I also admire, named David Strassman, who used to appear on that show very often.
Yes, he was on there a lot with Teddy Bear and
Chuck Wood.
Chuck Wood, yeah.
Which for my listeners listening to this podcast, if you guys get the chance, definitely check out David Strassman on YouTube. I would say this guy is a hilarious ventriloquist doing a whole lot of comedy, but this guy took puppetry on his show and just amplified it to one amazing degree. I mean, with the number of characters and animatronics that he puts into his shows, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and that was another thing I loved about growing up watching TV, and when they'd have guest puppeteers or ventriloquists on, and great, more puppets on TV, guest puppets. There was just so much more puppetry on TV back then, and there's just very little of it now, which is pretty sad. I mean, here in Australia anyway, there's still plenty of puppetry. You've got Helpsters,
yep,
I think it's called, and the Furchester Hotel, that one from the UK, that Hansen Sesame Workshop co-production in the UK. So there's still plenty of puppetry on TV. It's just here in Australia, we need it back. And Aletha and I did start writing a TV pilot. We also we filmed a TV pilot down in Sydney as well, which just got shelved, which is a real shame because all our characters were in it. And that was like about 2 or 3 years ago now. We were flown down to Sydney a few times to film our puppets in this cool TV pilot, which we were so excited that this was going to work. But they never ended up editing it together, and they just kind of moved on and did other things, and it's really sad. So that's another frustrating thing about film and television in Australia. Sometimes someone will come up with a great idea and they'll film it, but editing, no one likes editing. Even editors hate editing. And so once it's the end of filming and the director calls, that's a wrap. and everyone claps. And then that's the last you hear of it sometimes. And it's like, hey, you follow up. Hey, when is it all edited yet? When do we get a chance to see it? Oh, no, it's not finished. We don't know what's happening. Oh, no, they haven't. They've moved on. They're not editing anymore. And we'll let you know if it. We'll let you know if we hear anything. And then it kind of just time passes by, and then everyone's moved on, and then it never happens. So we did do a TV pilot, but we also wrote a TV pilot, and Elisa and I wrote something, and we tried to look at ways of getting it off the ground, but we kind of put that on hold because of all of our live commitments, and this hijabi girl thing seemed to be going really well, because the book authors who wrote the original story have been really supportive and really excited about this project, and so we're seeing this through because we know that we can get live stage productions to happen. They just work. We keep working at it, and we know that it works. We know we can get it to happen. Whereas film and TV is so tricky, and people sort of get bored really quickly. But eventually, we will either put together our own production with a dedicated crew who are willing to see it through to the end, including editing, or we will perform puppets on someone else's TV show or movie or whatever. It'll happen. We're just working on that. We're hoping that that's the big dream, the big goal, and we'll see if we can get puppetry back on Australian TV.
Here's hoping, and for me, and I'm definitely sure for a lot of my listeners here, you have our full support of that, and we hope it follows through.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, so we got a few more things here to talk about right before we wrap up. So, you've again mentioning about the ups and downs and the struggles that you've had. We have a number of upcoming performers, on the topic of voice actors and puppeteers who want to pursue this, but much like anything else, there's always that hint of discouragement. Oh, you should give up. It's never gonna happen. But many of us have managed to rise above that and continue to fight for what we do. So with that, what's some of the best advice that you can give to anyone listening here on how, if you have a dream or a passion that you want to pursue, but there's often some self-doubt as well as doubt from other people around you saying this is never going to happen, move on. What would you say, Brett?
Well, I would say that life is short, and if you have a dream that you really want to achieve, a goal, you want to follow this dream, life is too short to let anyone or anything stop you. If you want it enough, you shouldn't have any self-doubt. Like, if you truly want it, you just go for it. Because if this is something you know in your heart that you want to do and that you can do, and that you just have to keep going for it. There should be no self-doubt if you truly want it. And then when it comes to other people saying, "Oh, you'll never do it," I was told. Like I said before, I lost my first marriage, and I lost so many friends in this pursuit of this dream. I kept going forward. I think if anyone that tries to tell you that it's not gonna work, it's not good enough, you're not good enough, it'll never work for you. Well, if you lose friends, they're not really friends, because if they're not supporting you in your goal, if they don't believe in you, like Elisa believed in me, then who are these people? What kind of horrible advice is that they're telling you you're not good enough and you'll never achieve your goal? That's not fair. That's not friendship. So I got to a point where I realized I don't want those people in my life. I don't want people that tell me I'm never going to get there. Like, what kind of a friend is that? And if they just think that I'm worth unfollowing on social media or never talking to again, oh well, no great loss. I'm still following my dream. And, you know, the best revenge is success and living well and, you know, achieving that dream. And there were actually a couple of people who quietly doubted that I would get there, but they didn't say anything to me. And I had one friend who was very honest, and he's still a friend of mine today, but he said to me, I must admit, Brett, quietly, I did have my doubts, and I didn't think you'd make it, but you've proven me wrong, so thank you for continuing to follow your dream, and for showing me that you could achieve it, and well done, I stand corrected. So that was really brave and cool of that guy to step up and admit to me that he had his doubts. I'm sure many other people had their doubts too, but the best way to show them all is to just keep pursuing it, keep following it. Don't let anything stop you. Don't let anyone tell you that you're not good enough or you're never going to make it. Because all of those other people, think about all of those famous Hollywood stars who get up on their Oscar acceptance speech and tell the story of living in a poor neighborhood, growing up without much in their lives, but continuing to follow this dream. And, you know, and they often tell stories of people who doubted them or told them they'd never make it anywhere. And here they are accepting their Oscar award. So that's a similar kind of thing. You just have to keep ignoring all the naysayers, ignore the haters, and don't have any self-doubt if you truly believe in yourself. You just have to keep going for it, because without all that hard work, and also without the support of at least one person in your life that is willing to, you know, allow you the time to pursue it, you know, you've just got to give yourself that time. And of course, I don't wish poverty on anybody, but I spent a lot of time not having much to eat and not being able to afford my bills for a while. So that's not something I would ever wish on anybody. But, you know, I just wanted that. I wanted this so much that I was willing to go through all of that, all of those struggles to get there. And sometimes, unfortunately, it does require that. But that's just history now, and I'm able to afford my bills, and we live in a nice house, and we bought a van for the puppet business for all of our road trips. We own it outright. We paid it off. That's because of all the hard work and ignoring all the naysayers and just following the dream and keeping the friends that support you and just not caring about those who tell you that you're not going to make it. Like, it's not, you don't need those people in your life. That's my advice. It's a very long-winded advice, but yeah, I think that's the way to do it.
Hey, long-winded advice, but you know what? Couldn't have said it better myself. And
I'm sure I could have said it quicker. But,
well, no,
you know.
but you know what? With the purpose of this little podcast show that I decided to do, you know, because you know, there's people, you know, along with having huge love and respect and connection for the Muppets, those as well who are performers just starting or, you know, continuing to do what they do, you know, there's a lot of reality and there's a lot of hard work that comes along from that. And for all my friends to just share it, whether, you know, they're doing it as a hobby or whether they're pursuing it, you know, you hit nail on the head with that advice. And again, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
And so we wrap up with one final question, which is something I always love to ask since the topic of Muppet Fans Talking. Now, of course, for many of us, there have been a lot of favorite moments that we've all shared with the Muppets, whether seeing them on television, owning a DVD, whether it's or whether owning a toy or seeing them at an event, a concert or whatever, or just getting the chance to just go to a workshop and just learn from these performers that we all know and love. For you, Brett, what has been your most favorite Muppet moment that ever happened with you?
Wow. Well, for a couple of years, it was being able to work with Marty Robinson and Noel McNeil at Beyond the Sock. But since then, oh, wow. Because I've, as an Australian, I'm so far away from everything. So I feel very blessed to have been able to go to both America and New Zealand to attend Muppet events. Like, one of the things I did in New York was I got to meet Steve Whitmire when he was still performing Kermit, and they did a little Muppet event in New York. And I met him only briefly, but I got to see Kermit and Fozzie and Animal live and up close at a Q&A session all about, it was just called Morning with the Muppets. And it was so cool to do that. But then to be able to see these characters on stage again a couple of years later at an event in New Zealand that the Muppet performers very rarely talk about. See, they usually talk about Muppets Take the O2, which was in London, and Muppets at the Hollywood Bowl in LA. But the other big events, they came all the way to New Zealand for a big event called the Jim Henson Retrospectacle. And this was a spectacular event because it was the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra with Brett Mackenzie, who is from Flight of the Conchords, and he wrote the songs in a lot of the songs in the Muppets 2011 and Muppets Most Wanted. So he was sort of the host. And a lot of the puppet characters from Jim Henson's era, including Sesame Street, the Muppets, and Fraggle Rock puppets, were all there together, which is so rare these days, given that all of these franchises are separately owned. It used to be all owned by Jim Henson, and he would often have all of those characters appear together, like in Muppet Family Christmas. You'd see Sesame Street, Muppet Show, Fraggles all together.
Exactly.
Anyway, we got to see that all on stage at the Jim Henson Retrospectacle. And to hear all of those characters and see the puppeteers on stage performing them into monitors too. So they did live monitor puppetry on stage. So you could look up at the big screen and see just the puppets, or you could look down on the stage and watch the orchestra and the puppeteers doing their thing. And they had the wheelie stools. They would walk their puppets out on these wheelie stools and perform these hilarious scenes and sing with the orchestra. And it was absolutely spectacular. I went along to this concert twice. It was a full week of events. There were film screenings, there were Q&A sessions, and there were these big concerts. And at the end of that week, I got to meet Matt Vogel, Peter Linz. I met Karen Prell and Carmen Ostbar, and it was just to see them talk and ask them questions and see these puppets up close was absolutely a dream come true. So I think the Jim Henson Retrospectacle in New Zealand would have to be my ultimate Muppet dream time. I guess, I don't know, like it was absolutely spectacular. Like a whole symphony orchestra playing all of these songs and seeing these puppets up close, performing them with the puppeteers there, like, just brilliant, amazing. And then for them all to come out on stage at the end together, to be able to see with my own eyes on stage Muppet Show, Sesame Street, and Fraggle Rock characters all together. Yeah, they've probably signed a contract to say they're not allowed to talk about it very much because they only ever talk about the London event and the LA event, the Hollywood event. But this was absolutely mind-blowing. And there were Muppet fans from America that came all the way to New Zealand to see this, and from all over the world, because such a rare and awesome, spectacular event. Yeah, that's my greatest Muppet moment, I think.
That is wonderful, Brett. And also, I did see pictures of that event, and I really wish I would have gone to New Zealand and see that show up close and personal. In fact, when the Muppets did their show at the Bowl, And at the O2, first of all, I knew I wasn't going to be able to go to the O2 because that was going to be a massive, massive shred of coin. But just wanting to get that chance to just see them perform a full-length Muppet show at the Hollywood Bowl with all these characters.
Did you go to that?
I did not. But I do know a lot of dear friends of mine who did go to that event. And of course, I was very happy for them that they were able to see this amazing live performance of the Muppet Show. And yet, there's that little voice in the back of my head going, lucky.
Yeah.
But here's hope. I really do hope that, when everything calms down, I really hope that they do another live Muppet Show type thing, because it would be amazing just to be there and just feel the energy of just seeing a Muppet Show. I mean, who wouldn't want to see a live Muppet Show?
Yeah, that's right. The other big thing they did was the Electric Mayhem performed at a San Francisco music festival, Outside Lands, I think it was called.
Yes. Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem.
It was just a normal music festival with regular bands, and then this puppet band. The Muppet Band was one of the acts on the bill, and it's essentially thousands and thousands of people watching a puppet show, because it was a live performance from the Electric Mayhem, and that would have been so cool as well.
That I knew that the Electric Mayhem was gonna be the number one talked rock band from that event. Even when they did the promotion for Outside Lands, and Dr. Teeth said, "Oh, we're gonna be appearing at Outside Lands." I'm like, okay, guys, I love you, but how is this gonna work?
I love your Dr. Teeth impression.
I mean, that guy is my rock guru. For all my friends that know me, I wouldn't be in a world of rock and roll if it wasn't for Teeth. But when I heard that they were gonna be at Outside Lands performing, I'm like, on one side I was like, okay, that's kind of cool, but at the same time I go, how is this gonna work? Because we need the monitors so we could see where we are. How are we gonna be hidden from a live audience? That's gonna, because they're gonna see the puppets, but they're also gonna see us, the puppeteers performing. How's that gonna work? But they managed to make it work, and I was blown away.
Yeah, they did it. But it's about time they did something in New York, given so many of the puppeteers work on Sesame Street there, and we can't forget Muppets Take Manhattan.
Yes.
Why can't they do a live stage production of that, or at least just something like the Hollywood Bowl, just a Muppet show in New York, so it's close, so you can go and see it. I mean, I couldn't get to San Francisco or Hollywood or London when those events happened, but I could get to New Zealand because that's not far from Australia. It was actually quite a short flight, which was really cool that they did that in New Zealand. I think they did it because, there was a couple of people in New Zealand that really wanted to make it happen, and Brett McKenzie was all for it because he's from New Zealand. He's a New Zealander. So I guess they really worked hard to get this to happen. And I just think that because there's so many, that's the other thing that I did in New York. I went to regular events at the Museum of the Moving Image, where you'd have Muppet performers talking with Q&A sessions and showing screenings of old Jim Henson films and commercials and clips from the Muppets and Sesame Street. I think it would be cool if they did something similar to the Muppets at the Hollywood Bowl, something in New York. That'd be really cool.
I actually did talk to a lot of my friends about that, and a buddy of mine just told me, "Hey, if that ever happens, it's only a Metro card ride away."
Yeah.
In fact, there was a fan picture that I did. It was around when I was in college, called "The Muppets Take Radio City Musical."
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
that's the venue. That's where they should do do it.
I actually did find an old a transparent picture of the Muppets together, but then I added Walter, I added Constantine, and I added Lips to the picture, and then at the very top I wrote the Muppets take Radio City Music Hall. It was a fan picture that I did, but I mean, if I really hope something like that will happen someday.
Yeah, makes sense.
It does.
Ever since Jim Henson's day, the original core performers, they've always worked between New York, LA, and London. Like, they'd go to London and film The Muppet Show. They'd hang out in New York and film Sesame Street. Like, the same people. Jim Henson, Frank Oz, Jerry Nelson, Richard Hunt, Fran Brill, I mean, she was on the first season of The Muppet Show. I don't think she did too much more of The Muppet Show, but, but it was, I could be wrong. Maybe she just did the pilot. I can't remember. Either way, this core team of puppeteers would fly to all of these cities, and New York was one of them, so there's no reason why they can't do some big live Muppet event there.
Exactly. For anyone listening to this podcast, once everything dies down, someone please make some phone calls to the Muppet Workshop or Disney. Make this happen for all of us who couldn't see the show. Oh my. Ladies and gentlemen, while I would love to sit here and continue to talk about all things Muppets, we've come down to the end of another one, but before we go, I'd like to thank my guest, Brett Hansen, for joining me today on this new episode of Muppet Fans Talking.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a great pleasure. That was fun.
It was a lot of fun. We shared a lot of creative elements for the things that we do, as well as inspire a lot of people with with stories and events that have happened. And again, it's been a real pleasure just getting the chance to speak to you again, because I've had so much fun when you guys came to New York, and after that, we managed to keep in touch on social media, but just getting the chance to hear from you again, and also just ask you a lot of these questions for the show. It's been a wonderful time.
Yeah, thank you. I've had a great time catching up.
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brett Hansen, be sure to check him out on all forms of social media. We're talking Instagram, TikTok. I believe you have a YouTube channel. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. Larrikin Puppets is on YouTube as well. And we have a website, larrikinpuppets.com.au.
All right. So for anyone watching and listening to this podcast on YouTube, there will be links in the description down below so you could check out all of the creative and wonderful stuff of Larrikin Puppets. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brett Hansen from Larrikin Puppets. We'll see you all next time on Muppet Fans Talking.